Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our panel about culture and brands. I'm Thiago Davis, Global Pioneer at TikTok, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you today. So, at TikTok, I see every day how culture isn't just something that brands respond to, they actually help create it. It shapes connections, drives trends, builds relationships. So today, we're going to explore how three remarkable leaders are harnessing into the power of culture to elevate their brands in distinct and unique ways. So let's get to know them. Lily, you want to go first? Introduce yourself?
Sure. That
Working?
that on?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Lily. I work in brand strategy at Taco Bell. I've been with Taco Bell for about a year and a half. And I run a team, all of them are here, by the way, here the whoops in the corner, that gets to work on what we call category entry points. So I think Taco Bell is an amazing brand that evolves rapidly with culture. I mean, that's sort of how we've defined it and existed as a QSR for as long as we have. And our team was defined pretty recently, like a couple of years ago, to help identify more and more entry points. So we work on what we call like brand over time versus sales overnight. And so the team is working on longer term strategies to bring more people into the restaurants with things that might be more unexpected or areas or niches that you might not be known for at Taco Bell. That's me.
Okay.
I am Hansen. I'm the global marketing strategy lead at Walt Disney Studios, specifically looking after all of the Avatar films, past and future. And I also have a secondary role as the global brand marketing lead for the Simpsons enterprise-wide across the Walt Disney Company as well. So across both properties, I work with all of the teams in the studio for Avatar, across all of our amazing departments in marketing, and sort of the conduit to all of our filmmakers as well to make sure everything is, their vision is being brought to life in our campaign and we're serving the film the best way possible. And then the same thing on The Simpsons for the show. So I work very closely with the producers of the show to make sure that we are finding ways to integrate this brand across the enterprise of our company, because it is quite a large one. So that's me.
Phyllis.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Phyllis Rothschild, Chief Marketing Officer for Pete and Gerry's Organic Eggs. We are the largest premium egg producer in the U.S. For those of you who don't know, eggs are having a bit of a moment these days. We're constantly being pointed to as the culprit for price increases. However, the premium space is really starting to grow in version, and I think a lot of it is because of the cultural moment that we're having, where there's just much greater awareness about where your food comes from, about humane care for animals. Pete and Gerry's was the first certified humane producer of eggs, the first B Corp producer of eggs, and it's really just exciting. I've been there for about a year and a half to be part of a purpose-driven brand that really taps into that side of the culture. Prior to joining Pete and Gerry's, I was the leader of the branding practice for McKinsey, and I was there for about 8 years. So it's been a good switch for me to really start applying all the things that I used to tell people to do.
Thank you for the intros. So, despite the different industries, QSR, entertainment, sustainable foods, what really unites them is this deep understanding of how culture is able to drive creativity, engagement, and loyalty. So let's get to how they do this. And to start, I wanted to ask us to define what cultural resonance means to each of the brands. So really, for Taco Bell often taps into pop culture and humor, right? How do you define cultural resonance for Taco Bell? And can you also talk about how do you know when you really struck a chord with your audience?
Taco Bell is, before joining Taco Bell, it's like not a brand anyone can avoid. It's a brand that everybody knows. So we have like deep salience with people. So it's in a lot of ways like your sort of measurement-wise, like it's in sales. First, like the people come to the restaurant is really like at the end of the day. But to go more deeply on like how we define cultural relevance and cultural at Taco Bell, we have a pretty strong thread throughout everything we do in marketing to talk to our consumer, who we call the cultural rebel. So we have been defining the cultural rebel for a very, very long time as an organization at the MIT, well before I was around. But what that means to us is, we've always been a brand that encourages the masses to what we call live mass. And over time, we've noticed how much what living mass has changed for people, and like that we as a brand actually have to evolve what that means. And so that means we have to evolve what we believe the cultural rebel is. Because the cultural rebel 10 years ago did things really differently than the cultural rebel does now. In a lot of ways, rebellion looks really different now than what it did when millennials were out partying, getting wasted, and eating Taco Bell at 1 a.m. And we have to look inwardly very, very uncomfortably to ourselves and say that's not the culture that is pervading among younger people who will hold the majority of purchases in their future. And so we have to look at every time we're developing something, hey, are we talking to the cultural rebel? Oh, wait a second, are we talking to the cultural rebel of then or the cultural rebel of now, versus getting really caught up in we stand for, late night, fourth meal, food, because that's not what's going to propel us into the future. So it's like a very constant, ever-flowing discussion of moving that cultural rebel needle as generations change.
That's so interesting, right? Because you have a well-defined value or brand positioning, and it is about adapting to the cultural shifts around that positioning, right? So, Phyllis, for Gerry's thrives on aligning with values like sustainability, right? So, what is cultural resonance for Gerry's, and how do you measure your impact on that?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of the opposite challenge because not everybody knows who Gerry's is. We were sort of authentic storytellers from the start in terms of how we think about culture and what we tap into. I think in some ways culture's kind of caught up with Gerry's to the extent that we focus on animal welfare, we focus on healthy hens, healthy eggs, healthy planet. We partner with 200 family farms, so we also support family farming and the whole culture within what it means to manage a sustainable farm and keep small family farms in business. And so we really tap into that consumer who truly cares about all of those values. So for us, it's about identifying those consumers out there that we can mirror our values with them and their priorities with us. But at the end of the day, like you, we have to sell eggs, right? So we can't just be sort of preaching about all of these things. We actually have to say, how does that translate into someone making a decision at shelf? Fun fact, 65% of consumers make their decision on which egg to buy when they're standing at the shelf. So I can do all the screaming I want ahead of time, but it's really how do you capture them when they're actually sitting there making the decision. And so we really do have to translate that into what it means for them, right? I can say as much as I want about what's important, but if they don't care or they don't even interested on why I'm the first one to go and do that, why Gerry's was the first, I have to really try to target what it is that makes their decision at shelf. And so that culture about, is it convenient? Is it value-oriented? Is it something I can find on Walmart.com or when I'm shopping on Amazon Prime? Those are just matter of practicalities of what's happening in today's culture that I have to also engage with.
Nice. I think we're going to add a little bit of a twist into this because for you, Erica, with Avatar and The Simpsons, we're actually talking about IPs that have shaped global culture, right? So how do you ensure that they remain resonant today with all of these changes that are happening to culture every day?
Yeah, I think you hit a really good point. Movies are often things that are cultural moments, right? You could go see a movie in a theater and walk out and think, all right, that was cool, and then go live your life and go about your day. Or you can come out of a theater and it sticks with you. There's something that inspires you. There's something that you talk about years down the road. It was when I was a kid in a theater watching Jurassic Park. That was the moment I knew I wanted to work in film. And so there's those moments that happen through people's experiences when they go and see movies, the original Avatar being that catalyst for a cultural moment. In 2009, prior to that, 3D movies were things that were sort of kitschy and popped out of the screen at you. And James Cameron, our director, he kind of changed the technology to make it a little bit more voyeuristic. It brought you into the scene. It made you feel like you were part of that world. And that was a pivotal moment in filmmaking because a lot of other filmmakers wanted to start exploring 3D in that space. And then, 13 years later, building up into The Way of Water, we knew we had to build a campaign that sort of set up a second cultural moment for The Way of Water. And I wouldn't be a good marketer at a studio if I didn't bring a sizzle. So we have a little bit of a look at our holistic campaign for The Way of Water.
So it's clear that understanding your audiences and evolving alongside them, it's actually what is key to building these cultural connections between brands and culture itself. So now let's explore how other factors play in terms of what you do for your brands to connect with culture. I'm talking about three things: authenticity, audience insights, and taking risks. Because I want to start with you. So for Pete and Gerry's, consumers are likely very vocal about the values that you stand for, right? So how is taking risks part of your storytelling and maybe even product decisions?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I don't know how many of you do the shopping for eggs, but one of the insights we got when we were doing consumer research is that it's confusing these days. There's so much terminology, so much language. It's hard to distinguish what it all means. And one of our big insights was that you shouldn't need a PhD in egg science to go shopping for your weekly dozen. And so we wanted to be able to educate people about the value of something like a free range or an organic or a pasture-raised egg without being lecture-y and using lots of terminology. So we decided how to tell the story in a way that uses humor, uses some ways to sort of create the context of what it means for a hen to live outdoors and enjoy life as a chicken should, but also try to be memorable and tap into a different space than some of our competitors were tapping into. We're super serious and tend to, we have a competitor that's very almost exclusive in terms of how they talk about the eggs, and so we wanted to really just be a little bit more accessible and friendly. So we decided to take a bit of a risk for us from more of a traditional brand to create some humor in the space. So we created two ads. One was more targeted to a new launch for pasture-raised egg, and then another was more of our flagship brands. So I think we have them teed up.
Pete and Gerry's pasture-raised hens roam wild and free on acres of pasture, laying scrumptious, healthy eggs, just like nature intended. They're almost the wildest eggs you can get.
Wait, almost?
What's wilder than these? Yeah, Pete and Gerry's is probably wild enough.
Pete and Gerry's pasture-raised eggs, almost the wildest eggs you can get.
Here at Pete and Gerry's Organic Egg Farms, healthy hens roam outside in nature on sunny pastures and... Gladys, always kidding around. Well, these lovely ladies lay organic eggs with no GMOs or synthetic pesticides and... Dang it, Edna. Personal space, okay? Anyway, they lay delicious pearls of clean protein because they eat organic stuff like... worms, apparently. Eggs, as nature intended. Pete and Gerry's Organic Eggs.
In the sense that, first of all, we sort of set ourselves up for lots of people saying, oh gosh, why are they stealing eggs from these animals in nature? And then secondly, why are these poor worms being eaten? Because believe it or not, we do get attacked by PETA a little bit. And so we had to sort of walk that edge, but also try to do something that told this story of why our eggs matter. The fact that, these are almost as wild as you can get. These are hens that are running in nature, running in the wild. But then secondarily, that our hens are actually consuming bugs and worms and product they can get when they're outside. So without telling people this is the definition of a pasture-raised egg, or this is the definition of organic. We wanted to show it in a fun, humorous way that would be memorable. We'll see, you know?
It works.
We'll see.
As you spoke, I mean, you are in an industry, or you stand for values where people are very vocal about. So that's definitely taking a risk, 100%. Really, Taco Bell is a highly engaged fan base, as we all know, right? So how do you use the audience feedback to refine campaigns, and even to adapt to these cultural shifts that we were speaking earlier?
I love this question because we are such a large organization, right? Like, you know, international organization, but yet we can respond to culture really, really fast. And I think my favorite example is we've been working with Devontae Adams, a wide receiver, football player, who previously was played for the Raiders for Vegas, and we've been making ads with him for a long time. So I'm going to show a couple of the ads that we made, and then I'll talk about how we responded to the culture, like what happened in culture after we released these ads. All right, so we made those ads, and we obviously it was a film set, right? We put a Taco Bell in Devontae's house on set. But when he was traded to the Jets, the internet was like, well, what's going to happen to the Taco Bell in his house? What are people going to do? So then the social team, it was like rapid fire to create a fake listing for this Taco Bell. And got like stats on his real house and all the things and put it up, and it was obviously a total hoax, but it was like an amazingly powerful, quick reaction to culture, and I think in both sports marketing and just like the cultural breakthrough, it's got to be fast, and that I'm always amazed that like a big organization can do that, and of course you have a loud voices, you can do a paid ad like that, but truly I think the eyeballs on you know, the Jets trade and the Taco Bell in his house was probably bigger, and that cost us a lot less.
That's great. In Erica, I like you to focus on the authenticity piece. So for either Avatar or The Simpsons, how do you strike the balance between nostalgia and fresh narratives that feel culturally relevant today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the things that we've learned, especially after The Way of Water, is how much the Avatar films resonate with audiences, not just in the US, but around the world. Jim is incredible at world building and creating characters and storylines that really resonate with everyone, no matter what language you speak, what country you're in, and that's because of the themes that he crafts these stories on. And so really, as we're building the strategy for our film, as a studio, we're kind of pulling the themes of the film itself and taking cues from him to make sure that we feel like we're authentically connected to the story that people are so passionate about when they see it. And so things like family and all the variations of that can mean. By blood, by choice, community, and protecting the environment around us, that we're all connected to each other and have an impact on each other. And then technology, of course, because he's, as I mentioned with the first film, he really expanded the technology of filmmaking and then did the same thing with The Way of Water. So we want to make sure that every touch point in our campaign feels like it is connected to the film itself. Otherwise, people would kind of see through that. The other thing that I really think is important, actually prior to Disney, I came over to Disney and the 20th Century Fox acquisition. And at Fox, I was on the international team. So I worked very closely with our markets, and I think it's really important, especially in a truly global role, to make sure you're partnering with your colleagues in the local markets, hearing what's working there that might be a little bit different than here, to make sure that we're expanding our campaign and embracing everybody no matter where they are, and capturing the moments that are happening in local markets, and really the experts that live there will be able to tell us what they are.
That makes sense. Yeah, authenticity clearly grounds up all of your brands. And it's also inspiring to see and hear how, audience feedback does impact the way that you shape your brands, be it in a very rapid way, like Taco Bell, or in a very truthful way, or long-term way, like you do with Peter and Gerry. So now let's look forward, and I wanted to ask you about what are the cultural trends that you see shaping your industries in the next 5 years. And Erica, let's start with you, just framing a little bit more into entertainment, just keep the momentum. And can you tell us how you think storytelling and audience engagement will evolve for either Simpsons or Avatar?
Yeah, I think it's constantly changing, and it's changing pretty quickly. Focusing a little bit on The Simpsons for a second, I think one of the projects we're working on right now, it's really shown me how important it is to be innovative and be open and looking at opportunities. I mean, The Simpsons has just started its 36th year on TV. It's been around a very long time. It is a globally iconic brand, but it's still top of the crop, and it's current, it's relevant, and we are currently working on December 9th. We're going to be doing an alternate telecast of Monday Night Football. We partnered with the NFL and ESPN, where we'll be live animating the game that's happening with the Cowboys versus Bengals on Disney Plus and ESPN Plus. It'll be animated to Springfield. So being able to innovate and find opportunities to do things that are interesting. And this is also bringing us a cross-section of NFL fans, Cowboys and Bengals fans, Disney Plus family fans, and then the Simpsons fans. So that in the Venn diagram, there's some overlap there, but you're looking at a broader audience and finding really interesting ways to entertain and engage. And I think that's going to be critical for entertainment moving forward.
Makes sense. Phyllis, what's next for sustainability and transparency? How is it going to impact your industry?
Sure. So, I think we're going to continue to tap into recipe developers who, we talked about influencers before, but we do partner with quite a few who are authentic in terms of using pure ingredients, using sustainable products. So we'll continue to do that. We're about to partner with a new spokesperson or ambassador who maybe whether I want to share it at this point, but he's an ex-NFL player who has quite a following in terms of health and wellness, and has started a lot in terms of access to nutrition for kids who are in vulnerable places. He actually grew up homeless himself, so I think it's going to, we have partnered with No Kid Hungry, and so that'll be our flagship partnership for the next few years in terms of just our belief system around committing to accessible nutrition. Eggs is the highest source of, not to plug it too much, but it's the highest source of protein per gram of food out there. So the fact that it's a single ingredient, it's high protein, it's got tons of vitamins and nutrients and essentials. So it's one of those things that we want to really promote much more in terms of, the myth of eggs being unhealthy is gone. The FDA has actually put it on the healthy list along with Pop-Tarts. And so that is, something that we're going to continue to promote more and more and try to, access that whole narrative that's out there.
Go eggs. And Billy, what about quick service?
Taco Bell. Oh, that you're making for Taco Bell.
just more recipes with eggs.
Yeah. Have eggs and some tacos.
The future, I'm not going to give like an AI or a Gen Z answer, because like that's like table stakes now. Like we're heavily investing in AI as an organization, and Gen Z in general are like on our minds a lot. But this is more of a personal thing and not like connected necessarily to what Taco Bell is doing. But for the food industry and the restaurant industry at large, I'm curious to see what and fearful of it, seeing what sort of the more availability of GLP-1s and things like that will do to the food industry and how people want to eat food generally. And what that will do to like cultural acceptance of QSR, quite frankly, and like what that will feel like as those drugs become much more accessible to the masses. So just a much bigger watch out, I think, generally for the food. I think you're in a great spot in eggs. Great spot. QSR will need to rapidly evolve, which is why I think Taco Bell is really well poised.
Awesome. We already received our heads up, so I don't think that we're going to have time for questions, unfortunately. So I want to end up by thanking you all for sharing such valuable insights, and thank you for sticking with us till this time. I hope that the conversation sparks some new ideas on how your brands can tap into culture. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the evening.